Hey there. Before we begin today's conversation, I want to take a moment to honor someone incredibly special. Breanna Sprenger, who you'll hear from in this episode, was a good life ambassador, an advocate, and truly just a phenomenal human being. She lived with spina bifida, but that was never the most defining thing about her. What stood out most was her warmth, her grace, her genuine spirit. She carried a quiet strength and a powerful sense of purpose that you'll feel through every word she shares. Since recording this interview, Breanna has passed away. And while those words feel very heavy to say, I knew without question that her voice still needed to be heard. This conversation is part of her legacy, a reflection of her courage, her advocacy, and her unwavering belief in a world that is more inclusive. Breanna, thank you for your light. Thank you for your wisdom. And thank you for being exactly who you are. We are better for having heard you, and we will carry your voice forward forever. Welcome back to another episode of Surpassing Labels, the podcast where we break through expectations, challenge limits, and redefine what's possible. I'm your host, Felicia, and today I have the honor of welcoming a truly inspiring guest, Breanna Sprenger, Cuyahoga County Board of Developmental Disabilities, using her voice to advocate for inclusivity, accessibility, and meaningful change. I can't wait to dive into this discussion, learn more about her journey, and hear her insights on what it means to surpass labels, advocate for change, and create a more inclusive world. All right, let's get started. Welcome, Breanna. Thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate you taking the time to be here with us.
Hi, thank you so much. I'm so excited to talk with you today and to be on the podcast.
Great, thank you. All right, so would you mind starting off just telling us a little bit about yourself?
Yes, my name is Breanna Sprenger. I am 23 years old and I live in Parma, Ohio, in a maximum wheelchair accessible apartment, which is my very first apartment that allows me to live independently. I was born without my legs and right arm, along with spina bifida, which means there's just like a hole in my spine. And I also have caudal regression syndrome. Caudal regression syndrome means I do not have my tailbone or the last section of my spine. So therefore, those are my three different disabilities. I graduated from Avon High School in Avon, Ohio in 2019. I moved to Cuyahoga County in October 2022, and I became a Good Life Ambassador in January 2023.
Is there anything else that you wanted to share about your journey?
Yes. So, my parents found out that I was going to be born with a disability on February 14th, 2001. I had a hole in my brain, a hole in my heart, and my veins were not complete. Doctors also could not find my stomach, so my parents were given a 1% chance of me surviving. I was born at Cleveland Clinic, which I'm so grateful for them, as they have allowed me to live my best life. After I was born, they found that my stomach was hiding behind my lungs. So I did have a stomach overall, and I have had 27 surgeries so far.
Wow, that is definitely a lot to take in. And for your parents, I'm sure that was something very hard for them to navigate and go through.
Yes, definitely. They were very shocked and obviously upset. But when they initially found out, but thankfully we found resources and I was able to live my best life. But yes, I can't imagine what my parents were feeling, but I'm so glad that my parents, have given me the best life possible.
That's wonderful. So I guess if you don't mind sharing, Can you tell us a little bit about like what your childhood looked like and
Yes.
different things that you experienced during that time?
Yes. So I went to mainstream classes.
Hmm.
So I was in class with able-bodied students from preschool all the way through 12th grade. And my parents actually interviewed 30 different school districts when I was about 2 years old. And Avon was the district that was able to accommodate my needs. And I'm so grateful. I love that I'm from Avon, Ohio, and the community there has been absolutely like incredible, and they're so supportive of me, which I'm really grateful for. But I was involved in different adaptive sports. I actually go to a local adaptive sports organization called Youth Challenge, and it's for kids and adults with physical disabilities. So I was able to meet many children with different disabilities, and I love hanging out with other people with disabilities as I don't feel alone. Um, and we can relate on so many things. But I had a pretty good childhood. I am a proud big sister. I
No.
have two younger siblings. I have a younger sister who goes to Bowling Green State University, and she's a junior, and she is studying art education. Who wants to be, so she wants to be an art teacher. And then I have a younger brother who is about 5 years younger than me, and he actually is in the Ohio State University marching band, which which I think is pretty cool. My parents actually built a wheelchair accessible house for me in 2004. So that was pretty phenomenal, and I'm so grateful that my house was accessible, as many houses, unfortunately, are not accessible, wheelchair accessible. So I have a big family, so and then I also learned how to swim when I was a kid. I did adaptive swim lessons, and that's how it led me to Paralympic swimming competitions. I just grew up with a good childhood, and overall, I wouldn't change my childhood for anything. I did have 16 surgeries before the age of 8 years old, but I'm grateful that Cleveland Clinic Children's took such good care of me. And I also go to physical therapy and occupational therapy my whole life. So I had the resources I needed to live the best life I can now. And my parents always treated me like any other child. Um, and that allowed me to reach my goals, and I never felt like bad for like a victim or like why was I born like this. I just try to live the best life I can and try to help people understand what having a disability is like and how we're more alike than different.
Yeah, I love that. And I am so grateful that you had that foundation starting out because you're absolutely right. A lot of times people don't necessarily have that, and it can limit the possibilities that they see for themselves because unfortunately, if you're thinking that there's things that you can't do or can't participate in, you kind of grow up with that mindset and then you just limit yourself. And the fact that your parents were there supporting you every step of the way and, opening opportunities for you, no matter what they might look like for you, even if they may look a little different, you still got to experience those. And just planting those seeds of what's possible inside of you have helped you develop into who you are today and go for your goals. And I think that's just absolutely amazing. It's just
Thank you.
wonderful. Yeah. Oh, it's giving me good chills, good chills. All right. So, what inspired you to become a Good Life ambassador for Cuyahoga County?
So I had two friends that were Good Life ambassadors when I was living in a different county. So I always knew the program existed, and it was something that I always wanted to do. That was one of my main goals actually after moving to Cuyahoga County. And I'm a very outgoing person, and I like interacting with people. I like telling them about different resources and trying to help other people with disabilities live the best life possible. So that is what motivated me to become a good life ambassador, is really serving my community and being able to help able-bodied people understand and also help people with disabilities learn to advocate for themselves and see that they can have the best life as possible.
Oh, I love that. I love that vision, that goal, that mission. It's really profound the impact that you can have, not only for people that have disabilities, but also for the outside communities, promoting that awareness and just letting them be able to see the possibilities of what everybody can accomplish when they put their minds to it, you know?
Mhm.
All right. So, as an ambassador, you actively work towards meaningful change. Can you share a powerful moment or story where you felt the advocacy that you give or your voice truly making a difference?
Yes. So the most powerful moment I feel that my voice has made a difference is when I hear what kids have learned after our presentations at schools and how they will implement the knowledge gained in their daily lives. And that just makes me feel happy because then like other people will, that's just planting a seed in them, planting a seed to to learn about inclusion, and they possibly could grow up one day and work with people with disabilities or have best friends with people with disabilities. And they can also teach other people that people with disabilities are just like everyone else. So I definitely think learning young about disabilities is going to help them in the long run. So yeah, so just seeing what they have learned and seeing that, they took our presentation to heart is really powerful for me.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. I mean, the impact that you can create, just kind of laying the foundation for the youth and for them to grow up with that awareness and that seed that you guys plant within them. It only makes people more embracing, more empathetic, and just overall more accepting of things like people look different. Everybody can do things differently. There's no set way to do a certain thing. And just having that foundation starting from a young age, I think is a huge, huge thing and a wonderful, wonderful concept to be bringing into lives of little ones. So I love that you guys do that.
Thank you.
All right. So what's one big misconception or myth around developmental disabilities that you wish more people understood?
A big misconception that I wish more people would understand is that people with developmental disabilities' lives are not that different from able-bodied people. Are surprised that I went to a mainstream school and that I was in mainstream classes, or that I went to public school, or that I was able to go out and use the bus by myself. So I just want people to know that people with developmental disabilities, they may have caregivers and they may go to physical or occupational therapy, but our lives are very similar to theirs, and we are definitely more alike than different. And I wish more people um, would get to know people with disabilities.
Yeah, absolutely. I always like to say that, at least for me, I love to get to know people from the inside out
Hmm.
because then you really get to know the essence of that person. It doesn't matter what they look like or what they do or how anybody else perceives them. If you get to know them from that level, it just makes all the difference. And I really really love the misconception that you were talking about because you're just absolutely right at so many levels. So for someone listening who's not sure how they can help make communities more inclusive or accessible, what's a practical step that you think that they could start taking today?
So I always recommend people to get to know a person with disability, learn about their interest, learn about what they are interested in. And then I also recommend if you see a person with a disability struggling with a task, ask before you help them. So I think the first step is really just trying to get to know people with disabilities and learning more about disability etiquette especially like my wheelchair. I have a power chair that's like 400 pounds. So, just knowing that a wheelchair is an extension of that person. So just respecting the person in the wheelchair. But I really think, more people that are like that know about disability etiquette and awareness will really make their community a more accessible and welcoming place, as they'll be able to help motivate other people to learn about disabilities as well.
Yeah, and that's a big thing too, because I'm sure it doesn't feel good if somebody just assumes that you
Yes.
can't do something because we don't know. I mean, you absolutely have capabilities that we might not be aware of. I know a lot of times for my daughter, she can do just about anything she puts her mind to. It may not look exactly like how I would do it, but that's 1,000% okay. And
Mhm.
so we can't just assume that you are going to struggle with something just because it may look a little different. I mean, everybody's different. You can do things a million different ways. So, absolutely always approach and ask. And I'm sure if you need help, you will say, yeah, if you could, that'd be great. Or, no, I got this. And just be respectful of the person. Yeah.
Yes, I also that brought up something else that I wanted to mention. One thing that I have experienced my whole life is people asking my parents or my caregiver questions like, "Oh, what does she want to eat?" And then one time someone asked my mom and dad, "What sorority is she in?" And I was literally like right there. So if you see a person with a disability and their caregiver or friend, please ask them, as they can answer, most likely can answer for themselves. And when people ask other people questions like about me, sometimes they don't even know the answer, because it's not me.
Yeah.
And so then I answer for myself, and they always like are surprised. And then I'm my own guardian, and that is a big assumption that people have, is that I'm not my own guardian. So they'll call my parents or they'll talk to my parents, but in reality, like, I'm my own guardian and I make my own like decisions. So I've dealt with a lot of assumptions my whole life, and I constantly have to prove the assumptions wrong. But it sometimes gets frustrating when they make a lot of assumptions just by looking at me, as my disability is incredibly obvious. Um, and when I go in public by myself, those assumptions definitely come out, as a lot of people will stop me and like ask me if I need help or ask me why I'm alone. But I'm able to, be in public by myself. So I definitely, those assumptions can sometimes be very like frustrating, and especially because they assume I don't have a job. So when I tell them I have a job, or so a lot, I've dealt with a lot of assumptions my whole life, and misconceptions, so that I have to constantly prove them wrong. But I like proving them wrong and educating people in a kind way that I can do a lot of different things.
Yeah. I'm sure that is very frustrating because yeah, I can't even imagine the feeling of just people assuming that you can't do this or you can't do that or you can't speak for yourself. I that would have to make you feel very unseen, especially in normal everyday living circumstances, and that would be absolutely frustrating. So I really think that the more awareness that we can bring to everybody no matter what they're going through, is a person, and we need to respect them at that level. And would you be okay with somebody coming up to you and assuming that you don't have a job or you can't talk for yourself?
Right. No.
No, we wouldn't be okay with that. So it's not okay for us to project that onto anybody else, no matter what their circumstances or what things may look like for them. So, yeah, I think that's a
Yes.
huge thing to bring up.
Thank you. And then Um, something that also I've experienced my whole life is people make assumptions about my parents. We don't know why I was born without my legs and right arm. like people will make assumptions that like my parents did something like wrong, or that, because I have two able-bodied siblings,
Hmm.
and they'll make assumptions and be like, no, those are not your full siblings because you're like disabled, and they're not. And that's not true at all. They definitely are my full siblings, and a lot of people are not like satisfied when I like tell them that I was born like this. They get very like, they want to know like, well, why? And I'm like, well, we have gone through, like, I've gone through different testing to try to figure out why. And me and my parents are very satisfied with not knowing why I was born like this. So, but yeah, the assumptions about my parents hurt a lot, like hurt me more actually, because my parents like, did everything as they should have, preparing for a child. And I try to, so I definitely stick up for my parents too, and try to tell them that, my parents did everything they could, and my parents are great parents, and they helped me live my best life. And, you know, people with disabilities are born every day, and sometimes they just don't know, why. But that doesn't mean that, their parents did anything wrong or anything happened specifically.
Well, yeah. And I know as a parent of a child that has a disability, you do carry a lot of guilt and you
Yes.
wonder and you question. But I think, at least for me, what I have come to terms with is there are no accidents in this world. Things always happen because they're meant to happen that way. And my daughter is a gift.
Yeah.
You are a gift.
Thank you.
And you have a purpose for everything that has happened to you and your family, all of your situations surrounding you. And I believe that you're here to help spread awareness
Yeah.
and help shine the light and to help spread the word and be the voice in this world to shift things. And to me, that's a miracle. You are a miracle. And
Thank you.
gonna get all teary-eyed. Oh my gosh. Anyway, but that is so I would start telling people that kind of stuff.
Thank you.
Because-
I one question, like a question that I definitely have a problem with, that I talk about to people a lot, is when they ask me like what's wrong with you. Um so that question I definitely would recommend never asking a person with a disability. Or I remember one time a man asked my siblings, what's wrong with your sister? And they were very young. So they didn't really, they didn't know how to respond, obviously. So I answered for them and said I was born like this, but I don't, there's nothing wrong with, a disability. And that is something that I try to preach. You can, respectful questions, because I don't mind questions at all. I
Mhm.
accept questions. Respectful questions would be like, were you born like this? Or were you in an accident? And I definitely am way more open to answering that question instead of like the question like what's wrong with you. And I try to, when people ask me that, I try to tell them kindly that that question is like hurtful, because disability, there's nothing wrong with like having a disability.
No, and if you really think about it, everyone in this world has things that they struggle with.
Yes.
And how they manifest is different for everyone. Sometimes they're more apparent visibly, other times they're not. But we all have things that we struggle with. And to ask somebody what's wrong with you, I'm sorry, that is very unkind and yes, very hurtful. And I would not be okay with that. So you're absolutely right. Thank you for bringing that up because, we want to make sure that how we interact with people, no matter who you are, it's not going to be hurtful to them when
Right.
out and about. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right. What is one piece of advice that you wish that you could give to your younger self or to anybody else who might be on a similar journey?
A piece of advice that I wish I could tell my younger self is to take one day at a time. When I was a child, I was constantly like almost obsessing over the future and wanting to be a teenager and wanting to be an adult. And I wish that I would have taken one day at a time and just like enjoyed like being a child. And um a second piece of advice that I would recommend to my younger self and others is to be very knowledgeable about the disability that you were born with or have. I started like learning about my disability at like 15, especially my spinal disabilities. And I think that is so important to know, to have a good knowledge about your medical conditions, because that way when you're an adult and you have to make your own medical decisions, it'll be much easier because you'll understand like why. Like for example, my bladder had to be removed 4 years ago, and I understood why that was, it was a manifestation of my spinal disabilities. So just having that knowledge um as a, teenager is really important, because that way when you turn 18 it won't be like overwhelming. So that is definitely something that I recommend.
Oh, yeah, those are great pieces of advice. And they say knowledge is power. And if you have that to kind of prepare you for things that could possibly happen or just to make you aware of the potential, I think that that is wonderful advice to have.
Thank you.
All right. So, what is your biggest hope or dream for the future?
My biggest hope or dream for the future is for people with disabilities to have no barriers, like systemic barriers or attitudinal barriers around the world, for people with disabilities to live their best lives worldwide. The Americans with Disabilities Act really helped eliminate a lot of barriers for people with disabilities, but there still are different barriers that people with disabilities face in the United States and especially around the world. So I hope that there's way less barriers for people with disabilities, so that way we can live our best lives easier.
Yeah, I love that. And I really hope for that also. And that's a huge reason why I started the podcast is because I firmly believe that if we promote awareness and just share stories that people with disabilities are people and they're going through their own stories, their own journeys, their own lives, and just kind of opening up the veil and letting people know that, all the experiences that you have are very similar to ones that we have. They just look different.
Hmm.
So I'm hopeful that we can create that future eventually. Just need to
Thank you.
start shifting some minds around.
Yes, definitely.
What an amazing conversation with Brianna today. It's always so inspiring to hear from those who are actively working to create positive change and challenge the outdated perceptions. Her role as a Good Life ambassador is a reminder that advocacy isn't just about speaking up, it's about making a tangible impact in our communities. If today's episode inspired you, take a moment and reflect on how you can be a part of the movement towards greater inclusion and accessibility. Sometimes it starts with simply listening, learning, and being open to change. Thank you for tuning in to Surpassing Labels. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with someone who could use a little extra inspiration. And as always, keep challenging limits, breaking barriers, and embracing the extraordinary within the ordinary. Until next time, this is Felicia signing off. Take care. Bye bye.